Hello and welcome to Confetti Industry Week. So welcome to the session to Emily Catherine, who'll be taking you through about how she got into the industry, it's a really exciting talk, guys. Please use the chat function to ask questions and we'll aim to answer as many as we can. We hope you'll enjoy today's session, and a massive thank you to Emily for taking time out to join us today for our 15th Confetti Industry Week. Don't forget, you can still book up to the upcoming events for today and tomorrow using the website. Make sure to use your Confetti or NTU email address. As part of Industry Week, we're running a competition where you can win some cool prizes. All you have to do is tag us on Twitter or Instagram using hashtag IW21, sharing your experiences throughout the week. So Emily, please make sure you remain on the call after the end of the session, once students are left, so we can have a short debrief, but I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, nice to see you, except I can't see you in these weird times. So today, what I'm going to be doing is giving you a sort of step-by-step of how you start your own creative business. The talk's about 40 minutes in length. So what we've decided is if you have a question whilst I'm talking, please just cut in and Matt's going to throw the questions and interrupt me. And I'll do my very best to answer them as we go. So some of you will know me from last year. I did the Art of the Hip Hop Album workshop, and it was really fun and it was very practical. But this year we're doing quite a boring version of how you do the practicalities of actually launching a business. For those of you that don't know me and didn't do the workshop last year, I'm Emily. I have been a professional illustrator and artist for about 10 years, but I've had my business solidly for about 5. And some of the questions that we had last year that came up were, how did you do it? What do you do? It just seems mythical. We don't know what it is. So I was fielding questions about that. So I thought it might be really useful to talk about that today. I have spent most of my career doing sort of hand-drawn, hand-painted and illustrated artworks. And I have a real passion for urban music, whether that be hip-hop or drill or grime or trap or whatever. And I've sort of made a name in the business working with a lot of musicians. And so that is what you would call a USP. Ugh, boring, horrible term, but really useful when you're starting your own business. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So you guys are at a stage where you're still learning and you might be considering what you want to do in the future. And before you can even get anywhere near launching a business, you might be thinking, what steps do I next take? And you might want to go into further education. And if that's the case, then what I would recommend is that you keep your ear firmly planted to what is going on in your industry whilst you learn. Or you might want to go into the world of work quicker. And that means that you will have to educate yourself on some of the more theoretical and specialist categories that somebody going to university would learn. So it's about a balance of whichever you choose, having to mitigate the risk of other people having an advantage over you to give yourself the best chance of success. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, before you launch, and by the way, you do have an interactive PDF that will take you through these steps broadly, so you can follow along as I'm talking. But I will flesh it out and explain what all of those bits are. So firstly, what you need to do is come up with a name, an identity, or a brand that sets you apart from others in your field, or your USP. And ultimately what that means is you are your brand. Oh, Matt, I can hear you talking, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I think we're just having a couple of tech issues with my
mic. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so ultimately you are your brand, and this means exactly who you are. So your likes, your dislikes, your interests, everything about your identity is going to serve you when you come to the world of work, because when you're creating things for pleasure, those things you're going to have to monetize and sell. So it's important to try and think about who you are as a creative, because that is going to be your USP. So first of all, are you going to use your own name, or are you going to make it a brand name? If you are a brand name, there's a really useful tool which is called Companies House, and it's a government register of all of the different brands which have been registered. And it's a database where you can type in the brand name and you can check if your idea has already been done. So that's simple. Second is your own name. Well, Google your own name. Have a look at famous versions of you, see what they're famous for, but particularly see what they're famous for if it's the same field as yours, because you can get into quite a lot of hot water if you do that. So I had the same thing. I Googled my name and I had both worst case scenarios. I had somebody who had become a victim in the terrorist attacks personally. So I thought, oh, that would be disrespectful. And then I had somebody who was a very, very successful illustrator and author. So I couldn't use my own name. So I thought, right, I'm going to have to change it somehow. A really good example of this is a grime MC called FFSY, though, which I can't say out loud, but we all know what the abbreviation means. And the reason why she'd abbreviated it is because she had gone on to all her social media handles, to websites, and she'd Googled her own name, and they're all taken. And in her disbelief and anger, she typed in FFSY, though, and thought, actually, that handle isn't taken. That's what I will become. So taking inspiration from that, think about creative ways around it. But it is important that you don't share your name with many people who could be your competition, or share a name with somebody that could end up being on the top of that Google search. So the cringy term USP, unique selling point, hate saying it, but dead useful. This is quite a tricky one, because at this point, you won't have any objectivity as to what your unique selling point will be, because you're too close to it. You are you. It's very difficult to have an objective understanding of who you are and what you might provide. And there's no use in speaking to your friends and your family about it, because they love you and they want you to do well, and they're not going to tell you what you're bad at. But also, you're right at the beginning of your career. You have no idea what your capabilities are, because you haven't been challenged in that way yet, and that's a good place to be. So rather than looking at what you think you might have, look at what you don't have. So for example, consider some of the things that you've done at Confetti. Let's say that there was a module on like using CAD design and you absolutely hated it. You now know that you will not be anything to do with architecture, anything to do with designing kitchens or whatever it might be. So that's one. Perhaps you have done what you thought you would love, maybe like a cartoon strip or something, and you absolutely hate it and you don't want to do that either. So perhaps you would be more abstract or illustrative or freer, and have no narrative storytelling in the sorts of work that you do going forward. So maybe write a list of what you definitely are not really interested in. Come correct. So this is a big one.
Just sorry again, I've just got a question from Leo. So with using a brand name, I've seen two fashion companies not doing the same thing as me. Would I have to change the name?
If you have already started a business under that brand name, I would have a look at the Companies House register, because if they have copyrighted that name, then you might be in danger in the UK, if they've got UK copyright, of using the same brand name for a clothing company. However, if it's a different company, normally you're allowed to do it. The thing that I would advise though, is if that brand is a really big brand, even if it's like in the security industry or something weird, they're just going to get to the top of that Google search every time and they'll blank you out. So if you can change the brand in any way, that would be really useful. Does that answer your question, Leo?
I think so. Yes, he's just said thank you.
Okay. Come correct is the next section. And this is about collating all of the things that you need to look like a, you know, professional, reputable, but most importantly, a legally and legitimate business. So this isn't just a hobby. This is you being a professional. So for example, a website. Do you need a website? How are you going to host that website? Are you going to do Wix, Squarespace? Do you need to buy a domain name? How are you going to go about that? What about things like business cards? I know that we're in times of COVID, but at some point, fairly soon, hopefully, we will all be able to see each other again. And what's really useful is if you're out in a bar watching a favorite gig and someone says, oh, I really like your shirt, and you get talking, you can say, oh, here's my business card, and you look like you're professionally ready to promote your business. Those little things like that go a huge, long way. So with that, have you got a logo to put on your business card? How are you going to create the look of somebody who's coming correct? Just going to turn over your little fact sheet, see what I've got next. Oh, okay, so other weird little things that you may not have thought of, materials for packaging things for sale. If you are going to be a legitimate business, there might be physical products that you're going to want to sell. It's a really good arm of your business because it means that you don't have to rely on purely commission work. So what I would advise is buy from another local business, probably maybe at the same sort of level as you think yourself to be. Order something from them. Note down what delivery service they use. Look at the packaging. Do you think you could replicate the packaging? Is it important for you to have like more sustainable packaging, or would you need your branding on that packaging? Really pick it apart and see how you could improve on that. And think about the sorts of things that you're going to want to post out to people or display, and start writing those things down for a list of equipment for your business. Boring but necessary, insurance. This is a really annoying one because if you're going to sell products or you're going to create something live, you're going to need product and public indemnity insurance. This is a legal requirement, and often people who are doing, say, market stalls or something, they need to see proof that you are insured so that you don't end up suing them if anything happens to you or your products that you're selling. And loads of people freak out about product and public liability insurance. And they say it's loads of money, but it's a myth. In the building trade, it's loads of money because they're going onto roofs and they could fall off the roof and break their legs and then need, you know, years of care. Have we got another question?
Yeah, we have. Sorry, I was just getting the sound put on. So what if an animation, so if you're doing an animation company, Laura wants to know, do you still need business cards?
I would say, yeah. Because Laura, it's really important that when you're meeting people physically, that you can show them a business card that pings straight to your website so that after they've met you, they can quickly Google your website and they can see your portfolio within the 10 minutes that you've met them. It's also about you being the front face of your animation company. So you need people to have the Lara that they liked when they met you, and then the follow-up with the body of work that they now want to buy. I hope that answers your question.
I think so. I've not had a follow-up, I don't think, so I think we're good. Yes, she says thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So with product and public liability and indemnity insurances, it's really not as expensive as you think. There's a company called Axis Web, and you've got this link on your interactive PDF, and they do that insurance for £2.50 a month if you become a member. And Axis Web for creatives is kind of like a union that you would have for workers. So they talk a lot about legality. It's a good thing to be part of. Ethics. Now, when I was starting my own business, there was a lot of myth and a bit cloak and dagger about what it genuinely is like having to cope with the amount of information, how the lived experience of running a business has a huge effect on your mental health, your emotional growth. And one of the very tricky things that they didn't tell me was the idea of ethics in your business. So I think this is worth mentioning, because whilst we will all have very different businesses, the same issues will come up again and again. And that is, how do you say no to somebody who wants you to do work where you don't agree ethically or morally with the company that have asked you? How do you go about figuring out whether you're okay with that? So for example, you're a vegan and a meat company get in touch with you. You're a trans person and that company have been in the papers for being very transphobic. How do you go about professionally declining the things that could be actually, you know, not what you agree with? You need to start thinking about how you have those conversations and taking the emotion out of it, but also politely declining. And that's something that comes with practice, but it's something that you can do with your friends or with your colleagues or with tutors at Confetti now to get you into the practice of doing it. The other thing is, how do you ask for help? One of the ethical things about asking for help is really important. The way that you go about making friends and asking people to give you a leg up is going to really, yeah.
Sorry, Emily, I was just going to say, someone's just put in that they hadn't got the interactive PDF. Just to say, don't worry about it, guys. Anybody who hasn't got it, I'll resend it out again after the talk.
Amazing.
Oh, I do have another question though. So, as someone who has had experience with creating album artwork for music artists, what would you say is the best way to get your work out there to specific people?
I think it's a lot about reputation, and I think it's a lot about practicing and doing things for the love of it. So let's say you're particularly interested in a particular artist. You've tagged them in a couple of fan pieces that you've done. Nothing's really come of it, although they have interacted with you, which is amazing. But just start following the label that they're signed to. Start looking at other artists in the field. Don't take it personally. Keep moving on. Keep doing artwork of the things that make you happy. At the time that I was asked to do album artwork from really big people, I'd already had, like, on my Instagram, a million posts of different hip hop stars that I loved, or interesting images within like urban or black music, which I wanted to put out there. So that if somebody does think, I wonder whether she would be all right at doing an album cover for me, they can look on your passion for it. And they'll be able to see that you love it so much that you'd be, you know, it would be an easy job to give you. I hope that answers your question.
I think so. And on the back of that, we've got another one that says, what would be some good ways to find clients or get clients to come to you?
That takes a lot of time. Finding clients is tricky. And I do move on to this, which is kind of about networking. But basically what you want to do is, once you've got everything in place, you then need to go and make friends with everybody. You need to go and support the groups that you feel passionately about, whether you're doing that online or you're doing that in person. and people will recommend you. Word of mouth is the fastest way that you are going to get lots and lots of commissions and lots of interest. And the internet is the second way that you're going to be able to maybe get the clients that you want. Maybe you want international clients, for example. So it's important to be patient with that, but really put the work in to build that reputation.
Just on the back of that, Leo's just asked a question. Is it normal for the designer to approach clients, or is it best to let people come to you as the designer?
It's definitely a bit of both. If you are a graphic student, which has a very particular authorship in the style that you do, I would think that you would get a lot of clients that will come to you for your style. However, you approaching other people is a competitive market, far more unlikely that you will get the work. However, if you're approaching people, you know, that you just want to work on with because you're passionate, then that is likely. So really what we're saying is you need to become known for who you are as a brand, and people should start coming to you. But again, this takes time. So it is about being completely set up and ready to go as soon as they ask, and then they will recommend you, and then people will start coming to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, yes, Leo says thank you. I was
You're
just
welcome.
this is just from myself, actually, going back to the legality and ethics. This is something,
Yeah.
especially our second years have to cover quite a bit in some of their written work.
Great.
And something, again, probably not purposefully, but gets missed, or not necessarily the same amount of attention to it. Would you definitely say it is as important as the work they're creating?
100%. In fact, I would go as far to say that it is 60% you as a person and 40% your talent. Because if you have a reputation where you believe passionately, morally, that you're not going to deviate, or you know, you're going to put that morality into your work, that you can be trusted, that you are a fair person, but most of all, that you're an enjoyable person to work with, that you might be similarly minded to the things that you create, people will hire you on that first, rather than your talent first. So I would say it's even more important than your talent, which is awful for me to say, because it's true.
It's great for us saying that, though.
Yeah. So to go on to the second half of this ethics quandary, we've talked about how it's very difficult to say no, and you've got to learn how to say no and really connect with what you believe is right and wrong when it comes to who you work for. The other thing which is really important is how you ask for help and how you make friends and how you make those connections. If you get in touch with somebody that you're asking to look at your work and you say something along the lines of, "Hi, check out my portfolio," be prepared to be blacklisted forever from that company. I see it a lot with musicians. "Yo, bro, we got to work." What does that mean? Not hello. Thanks so much for taking the time out to read this message, which I'm sending you very out of the blue. Could you take some precious time out of your very busy day to please look at my work? I would love to work for you. You know, the way that you present yourself is really important. And actually, if you do it wrong the first time, they're very unlikely to want to work with you in the future. They will not see it as, "Well, you were young then." They will just see, "Oh, it's that guy again," or "It's that girl again." "Oh, God," you know, as if you're a bit of a bug. So it's also really important to start thinking about the way that you professionally engage with your community and ask for help and make friends and allegiances with people. So the next thing is contracts. Contracts are really important. They're a really important part of your business, because if you don't write contracts, it can catch you out and you will lose money and or reputation and time. So online, there are loads of different contract templates that you can look up. It would be ridiculous for me to give you specific links because you can just Google them for whatever specificity is your own creative practice. But for example, I have two contracts that I use loads. The first is a commission contract. So for me, I don't want to be paid any later than 30 days. You get 3 free edits before I recharge. I have a kill clause policy, and then I write what they get in return, which is normally, you know, a completely dedicated illustrator there to talk over their ideas, discuss, blah, 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 blah. I'll get it to them in a certain amount of time. Then I have another contract, which is a live painting and drawing contract. And in there, I will say, this is what I require physically for if you would like me to come onto site and do something publicly. This is very important. Sorry.
Sorry, we've just had Gabriella. She's just asked, what is a kill clause?
A kill clause is something that you write into a contract if the relationship between client and commissioner and professional becomes so convoluted, becomes strained, and the only way that you can get out of doing this job is to get them to sign something that says, I'm not going to do it anymore. So a really good example, which in the previous year I did actually explain in the question and answer session, was I was doing an album cover. The chap had asked me to draw something within the album cover, which I didn't realise was very offensive to a certain section of people at the time. I discovered this kind of down the line. I tried to discuss it with him and he didn't understand my point of view. And because I had the kill contract, I said, I'm very sorry, but I'm not comfortable with doing this. And I would still like you to pay me for the time that I've spent doing it. And contractually, he had to pay me for the work that I'd done, even though he couldn't use whatever amount of the image that I'd already created. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I think we're good on that. Just to say as well, yes, Gabriella says thank you.
You're welcome, Gabriella.
So Leo's just asking, before launching the business, would you be better beforehand going straight into freelance or working for another company first?
Ooh, gosh, that's a really good question because I think it completely depends on the individual. As this goes on, I'll speak to you about some of the things that you're going to have to do before you are fully fledged freelance. But I guess if you want a more corporate experience of what kind of corporate illustration or design or creativity is like, then by all means go and get that job. But bear in mind that you will not have the time to work on your own business. It's something that is a taste thing, but maybe it will become more apparent as I go onto that section of the lecture. I hope that sort of answers your question.
I think so. I've just noticed we have got another question from Dan that's in our chat function. Just
Sure.
says he's already working with Sony and Virgin Records doing cover art. However, he wants to expand to working with US artists. What would you say is the best way to do this, as it's not easy to contact people outside of the UK?
Well, Sony do have an international branch in the US. So I guess if you are in contact with people at Sony, that could be good. And, you know, ask the UK version and say, like, could you pass this on to people in the US? Like, if you've already got contacts, that would be the easiest way. However, it is kind of what I said before, which is, you know, make art in your spare time which reflects your passions. If you want to work with a particular US artist, make the work. Put it on Instagram, put it on TikTok, put it on, you know, whatever social media, really blast it. Because if Sony are following you already and they see that you love that, then they're going to approach you at some point and say, hey, I didn't know that you like Griselda. Like, if you love them, then, you know, we've got a, you know, it can make it easier. That that's what I would do. Just show it all the time. Display that you love it and that you're interested. I hope that answers your question, and congratulations.
He says thank you.
Okay. So I was talking about contracts, and I was talking about live contracts, and I just wanted to make a point before I move on from that particular bit, that contracts can also be getting very specific things. So for example, if you are disabled, if you have mental health issues, contracts are really good to say what your expectations are, what you're not prepared to do, some of the more sensitive things about working with people. So for example, you're claustrophobic, but you happen to have been asked to paint a subway tunnel. You know, you can say, if it's really scary for you, you need lighting, I will need to take 15-minute breaks, you mustn't expect this of me. And then you can explain verbally to the commissioner that that's the reason why. Normally people are more than happy to say, yeah, let's sign that in a contract, just so that everyone knows that you're not, you know, every 15 minutes going to the toilet or whatever. Have you got another question?
Yeah, we just had another question. So Kim is saying, I've had some small businesses approach me for commissions. However, lots of them appear to be sketchy. Is there a definitive way to check their legibility, and how should they be dealt with?
Yeah, well, first of all, Google. I mean, you are kind of, part of your job as a freelance creative is to become a detective. You need to, you know, go on Facebook, find the owner, stalk as many people as you possibly can, see what businesses they own, figure out whether you think that they're sketchy or not. If they're not sketchy, then it's worth presenting them with a contract and seeing how they react, you know, giving them your terms, seeing whether they're prepared to meet up with you and sign that contract. If they do seem sketchy to you, just ignore them, politely decline, say that your books are full, say that you're so busy that you don't have time to do it. Like, whatever is kind of easiest for you, really. But this is a minefield which you will regularly, you know, have to battle. And also sometimes you will get it wrong, and that's just the reality of it. And sometimes you'll get it right. As time goes on, you'll have a nose like a bloodhound. You'll be fine.
So just on the back of that, we've had quite a few come through. Kim says thank you. So when a small businesses approach Leo for commissions, a few have said they want something that is copyrighted. What do you do in this situation, so I know for the future?
Well, just so that you know, copyright isn't something that somebody can take off you unless you license it. You will always have copyright of anything that you create. That is the base standard. So if they want something that is copyrighted, they don't really know what they're asking for, Leo. What they're asking for is they want a license in perpetuity to use that image without having to credit you every time. And they want to pretend that that image is totally owned by them. You create a contract allowing them to use your image in perpetuity forever, and then on your terms. Do you want to be verbally credited? Because copyright will always be yours. I've only sold license for use in perpetuity once, and that was to a company that make musical books. So they teach children how to play music, and in the books there were little illustrations, and what they wanted to do was run those illustrations for every repress of a Scholastic book. So that made sense to me. Of course, have it in perpetuity. There's absolutely no reason, if you're creating, I don't know, like a t-shirt design or something, for them not to be crediting you. That's a lot of money to use that without your knowledge, because if it blows up, you see, you're going to be out of pocket. So make sure that if you do decide to do that, you ask for a decent chunk of money. Otherwise, you say, this is what you do. You pay for this. We always share copyright. You will have to ask my permission if you use it for anything else. We can get on to the finer details of contracts, but you see, one of the things with contracts is to make sure that you say that they're hiring you for the purpose of which it was intended. So if you do an album cover, they can't put that image on a mug, a t-shirt, a hat, a pillowcase, and sell that forever. They have to write to you for permission, and that may incur an extra fee per item.
No, that's really good. Again, we've got a couple that have come through saying, as a freelancer, how do you judge how much you should charge a client for your time based on skills as well as much as people willing to pay, as not to have people drawn away from your service due to price points? So this has come from Morgan.
That's a really good question, and actually much more simpler than you would imagine. So think about the total amount of materials that you've bought. Think about the total amount of time that it took you to do it. Think about 10% of your overheads, which I'll talk about later anyway. Really think about the cost to you. Look at yourself objectively. How far along are you in your career? If you are 10 years along, charge a bit more. If you are just starting out, charge a bit less. Look at what figure that comes out at and ask yourself if it's affordable. One of the really important things that creatives often do is they underprice themselves. I'm just going to be really real about it. If you work for a cheaper price because you want more clients, you are devaluing all other creatives and you'll ruin the market, because what will happen is everybody will have to work for £5 and then it won't be sustainable and nobody will be able to live. So your part in being a community of creatives, you're not in competition with everybody, you're in allegiance with everybody. And it's important that you see it like that, because their success is very important for your success. I hope that makes sense. Oh, no, sorry, I didn't quite answer it. I have had situations where large companies have asked me for a quote and I have quoted much higher because they're huge companies, so that Sandra next door, who has only got £45, I can afford to give her £45 worth of work. I also do a means testing thing where I know that if someone desperately wants a piece of art, but they can't afford it, they can pay monthly, or I'll give them a 10% discount. You know, so it's not going to hurt the community, but that's so that you're allowing access to people who love art, who maybe can't afford as much as they even think. That properly answers it, I think.
No, I agree. I think that was a good answer. And so I've got Amelia. She's just asking, should you be paid before sending the work you've completed?
No, you should be paid a deposit if that's necessary for your materials. Or you can split payments if it's a particularly long job. That's quite useful for cash flow. But nobody should be expected to be paid upfront, because what will inevitably happen is edits or changes or whatever, you'll have to give some money back. So actually don't do that. Instead, figure out what works best for you cash flow wise. Take a deposit if it means, you know, you want to secure that client. You really do want to lock them in and make sure, especially if you get the feeling that they might be a bit flighty. And then you receive payment at the end of the commission, because that will contain all of the different changes and the whole journey of it from start to finish.
Brilliant. And to be honest, it kind of leads on to another question is, what if a client isn't happy with the work that you've done and doesn't want to pay for the work which you've already completed? And that's come from Sam.
Sam, this will have a lot to do with your contract. So on some of the contract templates that you'll find, the important thing to remember is when you phrase it like, I will be paid for the work that I have done, if they're not happy with the work, then you're going to endeavour to change it for them so that they're happy. If you get to the point where they're not happy, then it's a kill clause. They still have to pay you for the time that you've put in. And there is no negotiation about that. That is law. And in the same way, you have to kind of be okay with all of the changes. You know, that's the reason why these contracts are in place, so that you don't end up high and dry. Okay.
Good. And we've just got Kim. She's saying, what's the best way to approach someone who has stolen your artwork, whether it's personal or commercial use?
Right, that's a really, really difficult one, and apologies if that's happened to you. The first thing that I would recommend that you do is contact them personally and say, I believe that you have stolen my artwork. Could you please take it down? And the likelihood of them stopping is quite slim. So then what I would do is there is a company called Acid, which is anti-copying in design. I think it's about £25 a year. It's like a union, and they give you free legal representation. They will write all the letters for you for a cease and desist. You can also get things like templates on the internet, which are letters of cease and desist, which you can then fill in all your own details. That's sometimes effective as well. But if it is really bad, then I would contact Acid. That's my best advice for that.
No, that's brilliant. And I've just got another 2 questions from Leo, actually. I'm not sure if you've maybe answered the first one. So leading from what you've said about being paid, when sending work to the client, do you include some sort of watermark to avoid them seeing it before they've paid for it? And the second question is, when does it get to a point when a business needs to potentially start employing more staff?
Oh, okay. Definitely send things with watermarks, or if it's a PDF, have a locked PDF as well. That's another kind of good one, so people can't rip it, or if they screenshot it, it will be obvious. A lot of this is based on trust. You know, you will be working with clients that you will have to kind of show them certain bits and you don't want them to steal. If you think they're going to steal it and you're a bit funny about it, watermark everything. If your business has grown to the point where you need to employ people, then that's what you'll have to do. I mean, that's going to be such a long time down the line, I would imagine, unless what you need to do is employ someone because it's something like clothing. If that's the case, you'll need to register yourself differently. You'll have to register yourself as a company. So I do get onto that, how you do that. And it does depend on your age and the sorts of kind of the monies basically that you need. So yeah, I hope that sort of answers it.
No, that's good. He says thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so where were we? Right, so we've done the contracts, we've done the ethics. Money, budgeting, realism, jobs and career, and other sacrifices. This is the really important bit. And you guys are all right, like you're so far ahead. The questions that you're asking, you're like, yeah, I've already started my business, I'm here. But just before, it's important to try and consider some of these things because these really catch people out and I don't want you to suffer the same fate. How much money will you need to start your business? Will you need a lump sum? Will you need to borrow money from someone? What are your overheads of living monthly? Do you live at your parents'? Do you pay your parents a rent? Do you live in a shared house? How much does it cost you to live? Because if you're going to start your own business, you're going to need to figure out every outgoing, which includes your own personal living, as well as the outgoings of your business. You guys are graphic students. You're going to have to pay for what? CS InDesign, or I don't know, like what are you going to have to pay for that? So that's 25 quid. Your phone contract, God, that's massive. Do you need like fiber internet, the most expensive, to have all the Zoom calls and the speeds that you need? Budgeting all of that is going to give you a figure at the end of it. And that figure, and I hate to tell you this now, but this is the reality, you are not going to be able to live off your independent business to that figure's amount. You're not. You've got to invest a lump sum of money. Where are you going to get that money from? And then you've got to sustain yourself on a monthly basis. Freelance work doesn't give you a monthly wage. It gives you cash flow problems. It does this all the time. Your job as creative is to pocket money and put it aside. So this is a really important thing that you're going to have to think. And the only solution really is to get another job, a job that you don't want. That's kind of the reality of it. So
sorry to butt in again, Emily. I've got a question from Lizzie. She's just saying, what is your opinion on being paid in exposure experience, especially as a student when you're first starting out?
Okay, there's a really interesting balance here of this exposure argument that I think we really need to pin, really, really very specifically put a pin in it. The reality is nobody should be expected to work for free, especially when the term exposure is bandied about. However, if you are at the bottom of that ladder, the bottom of that rung, and you are desperate to get up, there are a few things which really genuinely could bolster your brand. And by that I mean, is the company that is asking you to work for free going to give you the sort of reputation and spotlight that you need? And how can you get the best out of it? So let's say that you are a clothing designer and Boohoo come to you and they say, well, we've seen this cool tote bag that you designed and we love it. Can you give it to us for free? And we'll say that you did it. You can write back to them and say, I'm interested, but there are a few things that I require. And you will write them a contract saying, I don't want it to be in small print on the bottom of a website. I want you to say it's a, you know, whatever your name is, versus Boohoo collaboration, big on the website. I want it to be on all the clothing tickets. I want you to do a shout out on social media. I would like to come in, you know, to head office and have a cup of tea. Whatever it is that you require, there is a way of making it work for you. So I will decline, you know, small business things, and I will accept large business things that are really going to give me the exposure that I need. I hope that answers that.
Yeah, we've got a question from Leo again, just off the back of it, and Lizzie does say thank you. Just saying, do websites like Fiverr actually make it easier with getting your name out there?
No, so Fiverr is a really good, people per hour, and Fiverr is a really good example of how very, very low paid work damages our economy as creatives. If you can possibly avoid it, please don't work on those sites. And the reason for that is that often you can't put a contract in place because you're on a platform that expects everything, you know, for a certain amount of money. Even if you're getting clients and then you're negotiating your own prices, the fact is people are turning up to those sites so that they don't have to pay what is the current going rate for really good quality work. The longer you stay, the less your reputation is going to be bolstered. You know, you're going to end up being a people per hour or a Fiverr designer, which is not something that you want to have going forward. Going forward, you want a worldwide brand. You know, you don't want to be a big fish in a little pond, even a big fish in a little pond on Fiverr. You need to be exploring and really receiving all of the opportunities as possible. And what will happen is you will get so many commissions on Fiverr that your full-time job will be a Fiverr designer, which is not anything that people want to kind of lock themselves into because you're not getting paid enough.
No, I think that's a great answer. And Leo says that's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we were talking about the statistics of businesses that fold. 90% of businesses fold within the first 5 years, and 45 fold in the first 10. So when you're looking at actually monetarily sustaining your business, this is why it's important to keep pushing money into your business. Now, this might mean that you have a bar job, a weekend job, and then your business. This is about trying to push as much money as possible, but give yourself enough time so that you can have the emotional space to you know, do your business. A great example is you get offered as a junior designer to work for a massive design team in a company in Nottingham. So you think, oh, it's nice and local. I can walk to work, save my money that way, put it into my business. And you're only doing part-time. But every day you get home from that part-time job, you're exhausted because you've got deadlines, a boss that you hate, you're designing things that you don't really understand, and it's a bit of a steep learning curve because they've kind of got you doing, you know, a learning design thing as well as a kind of branding thing. And you're an art worker really, but you're working as a, that's too much. And it's completely taking your focus off your business. Far better that you have a bar job where you love all the people, you're out, you're enjoying it, and you come home and you don't have to think about it. So one of my jobs when I was starting my business was a cleaner. And I have to say, out of all of them, that was my favourite, because I put my earphones in. I would be in the middle of the night in buildings that were all shut down, nobody there, clean everything, and just get a cheers and great job in the morning. I didn't take the stress home. And in the days, I had all of that time to create my artwork. So whatever job you get doesn't define you. Your work, your career defines you. So you will always lead with that, I'm a creative, when you're asked what you do, not, oh, I work in a bar. Doesn't matter. You work in a bar to feed and invest in your actual career. The next thing that you have to do is to register as a self-employed sole trader. So again, for those of you that have your interactive PDF, there's a link, and it's a link that talks about people under the age of 18 who want to register their business and register as a sole trader, and what grants and what support is available to them. If you're over 17 and you're 18 and above, there's loads of stuff on the internet as to how you do it, why you do it. But basically, it's a legal requirement, which means that when you run all of the money that you've made through your commission work and through your business, you'll get taxed the correct amount. You don't currently employ anyone else, going back to this last question. So that's the reason why you say that you're a sole trader. And you are allowed to still have a PAYE or a BACS paid job on top of that. It just literally separates all of the money and the tax that you owe for your business from any other jobs that you need to do. This is super important because a lot of bigger companies won't touch you if you're not actually registered as self-employed. And actually you can't get insurance unless you're registered as self-employed as well. So this is a big thing that you need to do. Marketing. So we're nearly there. We've only got marketing and networking, and then you launch. So marketing, how are you going to market your business? Social media is the best way for local. Friends is the best way for local. And as we've talked about this, but as word of mouth spreads, you will become better known, more recommended, and eventually you'll start to get the word out there through social media channels, which international places will start to see, and they'll start, really getting there. But you need to figure out what times you post, what hashtags you use, what platform is best for you. If you are an animator, you need to get yourself on TikTok, and that TikTok cannot also have you with pictures holding your cat. It needs to be, I'm an artist on TikTok, this is my animation page, and it's all animation. So the next one, networking and busting some myths. This is the big one for me, because when I was told how to start my creative business, they talked about networking, and all I imagined was like a porter cabin with loads of people turning up to talk about work, standing over like a cold buffet of food and just talking about, and I didn't understand what the whole concept was. So networking is just making friends. It's literally that. I had no idea. You go to the things that interest you, that might have something to do with your business. You try and be as extroverted as possible, and you walk up to people and you say, oh, did you enjoy the gig or whatever? You're open, whatever it was. And then you give them your business card. You ask what they do. You say that you're going to check them out. You follow them on social media. That's essentially networking. If you see that there are people that you want to impress, like clients-wise, and they're all going to this film screening and you've never even seen the film or whatever, go to the screening. See if you can get chatting to them at the bar, like ask them what they thought about it. That's really what networking is. And then the final thing to do is launch. But before, I'm just going to run through a list of pros and cons of what it's really, really like to have a business. So this I actually have to read. Are you ready? Pros of having your own creative business. You are a master of your own destiny. You can control how you want to come across and use the time the way that you want. You get to curate what work you take. You get to choose. You have less responsibility for others, only yourself. You won't be letting anyone down if you need to take a sick day and you don't have to answer to a boss. You have a varied and vibrant working life. It's never boring. You get to see the beginning, middle, and end of each project, and the satisfaction is completely yours. That's very true. You'll make lifelong friends, and you get to do the thing that makes your heart sing every day. They're all pros. The cons: no sick pay, no holiday pay. You will have to prioritize work above everything else because you will be chasing money to sustain your business. That means maybe skipping your friend's wedding, maybe not going on so many holidays, like quite a big sacrifice. You are your business, and you will have to adapt your socialization as such because you're always on duty in this way. So any social faux pas that you make will now have quite a significant, effect on the way that people see your business. You will work incredibly long hours, and it will be hard work. You will make mistakes which will hurt your pride, ego, and sometimes well-being. You will have to keep an open mind and adapt to the market, even when the market takes a turn to something that you hate. Otherwise, you will become too niche to survive financially. People will pay you terribly late. That will rock the core of your business and be difficult to negotiate. Even if you put 1 million contracts in, they still do it. You will have to work a crappy second, third, fourth job to finance your business in the beginning. You'll be poor for a while and have to sacrifice many creature comforts. You will have to be at the top of your game to compete for large company work, but in every department, not just the reason why you started. So these are some things to consider before you take the plunge. So on your interactive PDF, there are links that you can click. One of these links is a YouTube video from the most successful designing company in the US and the CEO of that, called Mike Montero. It does have swearing in the title, so please be aware of that. But it's a creative coffee morning where he gets an actual lawyer to answer some of the questions that creatives regularly come up with. And the lawyer will literally, give you an insight as to what you need to say and do. So I would highly recommend watching that. I don't know how much longer we've got left, but I'm happy to take more questions.
Just having a look. We've not got any popping through at the moment. I think we've been excellent at answering them as we've gone. I think we've done about 30 as we've gone through. It's been good. But no, I mean, for me, that's been really good, especially kind of a bit of an eye-opener looking at the start. It's not all kind of rainbows and sparky things right at the start. There is a lot of kind of grinding to get there. But yes, Gabriella's just said, can you please go back to the contract bit? Yeah, is there anything in particular, Gabriella, you'd like to go through? Something about a commission contract.
Yeah, Gabriella, if you're looking for a good commission contract, if you Google commission contract for graphic design, or whatever your specialism is, you'll see the sorts of things that people put in contracts, and you use that as a template. Obviously I don't know what you do, so I can't kind of give you the template off the top of my head, but those Googleable templates are really good for kind of making you think about what you need to include or not. Really, with commission contracts, you want to figure out what happens if the person keeps changing their mind. How many times are you going to redraw or edit something before you say, actually, I've kind of got to charge you all over again? Now, for you, that might be 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. I have a very, very short amount of time that people can change things because I'm hand painted. I literally have to paint over it, and it can risk ruining the whole piece. For payment options, how late can you be paid before your cash flow runs out in your savings box? You've got to save some stuff for your tax, but you've also got to save some for your cash flow. So that's a really important element of it. But yeah, you just need to Google templates, and there are loads on the internet, and just literally download all of them and really have a look at what people mention.
Brilliant. Hopefully, Gabriella, that's answered your question. And Leo has just asked, how would you enforce a contract?
you don't need to enforce a contract. If someone says that they're not going to sign a contract, then I would say that's a really big warning sign to get out. So you say, this is my contract of working, in the same way that, like, if you were going to hire a car and they just sort of said, yeah, it's, you'd be like, oh, I don't know whether, shouldn't I be signing something? Because what, you know, so it goes both ways. If you offer a contract, you are taking responsibility for a lot of it. Within a contract, it's not just saying, look, this is what I expect of you. It's also you saying, and this is what I have to offer you. Please, this is what I want you to expect of me. So the most discussion that I've ever had over a contract was with a US record label, and I was doing an album cover, and they wanted rights in perpetuity, but they kept kind of disagreeing with certain things. And I said, look, I can see that you want rights in perpetuity. I can see that that's what you want, and I cannot give you that. And I cannot give you the original paintings because, you know, I'm going to have to make every original painting £32,000 because it would be, you know, a huge loss to me if I couldn't exhibit them or talk about them. And eventually they said, oh, all right then, you know, it has to be, a contract is mutual. It's just a base legal agreement to make sure that it's nothing becomes unfair if there's a miscommunication.
No, that's really good. Really good point to kind of add. It's not just about protecting yourself; it's also protecting the company. So it is a bad thing if they're not willing to look at them. So
Yeah.
Andre's just asked, when starting your own freelance business, would it be more professional to have an alias as a business name or using your full name?
I love that one because I don't think that there's anything wrong with having a brand name. It used to be, the old school way was, if you're a creative, you use your own name, you know. And I just think, why? Like, if you've got an amazing alias or an amazing idea for a brand name, go for it. Like, and it's weird because, you know, when you get well known, people are going to say, oh, hello, Mr. Pencilhead or whatever. They're not going to, you know, and it is going to be when you're going to like have to write Mr. Pencilhead or whatever your brand name is. By the way, that's amazing. You can take that one for free. But yeah, like, if you've got a cool alias, then become that alias. Like, that's your brand. Personally, I've actually found the fact that I'm not using my real name really useful to differentiate from, you know, me as a professional and me as a real person. And also it's kind of good to kind of wheedle out the weirdos, because if a weirdo says, hello, Emily Catherine, or you know, pretends to know me, I know that they don't really know me. You know, it's quite clever.
No, I completely agree. And just had Jade has just said, I am now Mr. Pencilhead. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
And Leo's just asked, what do you do if someone breaks the contract after signing it?
Right, so if it really, really gets bad, what you do is you get a lawyer involved, and that lawyer will write to them and say that you've broken the contract and you owe a certain amount of money. Or you're using an image, this is another common one that happens, and then you send a cease and desist. It's always followed up with legal action because a contract is a legal form. So that's what happens. Also, like, I think it's worth saying at this point that if it's a good rather than a service, the cost of taking somebody through a small claims court really isn't as expensive as most people kind of say. It's about 80 quid to get the ball rolling. It only gets expensive if that person very much keeps, you know, saying that they're not going to pay it. That's when, you know, your legal costs start to spiral out of control. I've never taken anybody through a small claims court because I've always sent either a cease or desist or got a letter from a solicitor saying you need to pay up, like there's no choice, and I've been paid, you know.
No, that's brilliant. Just have a quick look if we scroll through some of the questions. I don't know if there's...
Yeah, I don't want to miss anything.
Just having a look. I think we've done them all. So just one here from Leo I think I've missed. So any contract can be a legal form no matter who writes it?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't need it, you know, second written. But what I would say is don't sort of write it off the top of your head without making sure that it does use legal words. Like, I wouldn't just sort of make it up. Definitely like look at some of the legal templates to see how they word things, because what will happen is if you do a contract which is very colloquial in wording, and the people that you're working for have a contract writer, it won't, your part will be easily to pick at holes with. You see, this is why I'm saying definitely look at templates, rather than saying, oh yeah, you know, you write this, because your contract needs to be pretty watertight. If you're concerned about the kind of, you know, the quality of the legal stuff, then if you're a member of ACID, you can obviously ask them, or there are loads of local solicitors. It won't cost you very much to go in and say, could you just check out whether I've got everything on this contract right? Like, it's really not as much money as you would think. And also phone them up and ask them if they have packages for people at the beginning of their business to do things like this, just to double check over, like, are you legitimate? Yeah, okay. Because it might be as simple as, well, it's not really going to cost us a lot of time, maybe 80 quid. And that would be such a good investment, wouldn't it? So it's important to really think outside the box and be quite ballsy with it, because this is you and your business.
No, again, that's really excellent. And we've just got a couple more. So what if they've signed, but they don't want to, let's say, pay the final due because they didn't choose your work?
If you put a contract in saying that they're paying you for your time, it's your full time. Like, if you've spent 16 days on it and, you know, you've spent 16 days on it, it doesn't matter if they pick someone else, they have to pay everybody. Now, if at the beginning of that commission, they tell you, we will not pay you if we go with somebody else, that's an entirely different situation. And the risk would be at yourself, because you would be perceiving that as, oh, it's worth the punt, rather than they're definitely, you know, it's a definite commission. So that's all covered in contracts.
Brilliant. And Kim's just asked, what's the best advice to give when your business has suffered major damage?
Ooh, do you mean monetary damage? Do you mean reputation? Can you be a bit more specific about that?
Just see if anything crops up. Reputation first, then finances.
I would take a step back if it's reputation and literally disappear, because I think a lot of independent business owners think that we're always being watched and, you know, people are talking about it, and actually people don't care. They're far more involved with their own lives and what's going on. They won't have even noticed that, you know, you've taken a couple of months off. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, you are entitled to rebrand. If this reputation damage has been really, really bad, be open about it. Say, it's time for a new leaf. We are rebranding. We're going to do things differently. So this page is changing from Big Blue Bear to Little Red Hen. And Little Red Hen is exactly the same as Big Blue Bear, but we're going to look different. Sometimes just a visual change can mean a lot for you emotionally, because you've had to go through that. And it kind of triggers people to go, yeah, that's not what I used to shop at. This is a new thing. This is new. That's how they read it. So definitely from a reputation point of view, take some time off to deal with what's happened. Consider rebranding, but be open about why you're rebranding. Monetary wise, this is really difficult. Again, remove yourself from that community for a bit, stop thinking about it, and really take your foot off the gas when it's coming to putting money into your business, and go and make the money elsewhere. See if you can feed money back into the business yourself. This might mean going back to 2 years ago when you had 5 jobs, rather than a year ago when you've only got 2 other jobs. Or if you're, you know, really in a pickle, look at business loans, look at community help. We're very lucky in Nottingham to have actually a very supportive bunch of people that can recommend funding. Arts Council funding, we used to have European funding, you know, local education funding. There's lots and lots of stuff and people will advise as to, you know, what you can apply for and what not to. But again, I would say it's ultimately your responsibility. If it means that you have to go and take a bar job, you know, then do that. I hope that answers your question.
Well, just to kind of say, I think someone said better get littleredhen.com before it's gone. But
exactly. No one wants Big Blue Bear.
Exactly. I don't think everyone's after that. Maybe it's a reputation hit. So
Definitely.
I think that's all we're going to have time for. So just to say thank you, Emily, but do you mind staying once the students have left just to have a
Of
little
course.
debrief, if that's okay? But
Of
just
course.
to say thank you, Emily, for giving us all that insight. It's been
You're
brilliant.
so welcome. Thanks for inviting me, guys.
Now, there's quite a few thank yous coming up in the chat.
Oh, thanks, guys.